Cool. Well, I got 8:33. So, John, you made up the agenda. Why don't you go ahead and run through it?
Okay. I was just wondering here, I'm looking to see if Carl showed up.
I haven't seen him on the list.
Okay.
He said he was coming. I apologize to Joe and Laura because he did not have their emails. I just forwarded the thing about 8:22, the material that he sent. The last.
Okay. So cash position by fund, if we look at Bill's financials, we can get it there, or we can pull it up on what Carl sent us. Which
did that come yesterday? Oh yeah, there it is. I see it. Never mind.
Bill, do you want to? Is there anything you want to say about some of this?
Carl just came on, by the way.
Carl's on? Oh, good.
Okay. You know, I'm kind of, I said it when I realized that the cleaning ladies come every other Wednesday, and today is every other. So I was going to have everything set up at home, and I have to, so I'm here now in town hall in the council room. So I don't have the cash position. I don't have that in front of me because I printed it and sitting on my dining room table. But basically, you all have the cash position by fund. Right now, our total cash position in the town is about 2.6 million. And that's the one before the 725,000 went away. So
hold on a second, Bill. So what we're looking at here is the one you sent out before.
I also sent you April, that's the one that April 9th. And if you see 215 has disappeared. The way the software works is if there's nothing in the fund, they don't print a zero for you. So that the CCMG fund was drained when we paid. We still have some more money that we have to find. And I think that you can look at the fact that the GO bond, the only expenses that we've had out of there were set up initiation and things like that. We paid the bank their 4-year fees all up front. So the only money that we're going to spend out of that should be that 212 is for the beach remediation. And I feel uncomfortable about I find myself calling Nicole at Woodruff, asking for a bill, which it makes me uncomfortable chasing a bill when they should be chasing us. But anyway, that one, I think the conventional wisdom on that one is from you, John, is that there probably will be at least $100,000 left in that fund after we do finish 21 and do whatever we have to do at 28. Is that correct?
At 23, yeah, right. I'm assuming we'll have 100 plus. I'm hoping it'd be closer to 2.
Yeah, that's okay. So, and we did talk to Carl, and that could be used for for other things. I just received my tax bill yesterday. I don't know whether everybody else got theirs. So we should be getting our tax receipts in June for the half year, and everything else seems to be in order. The one thing I want to do in terms of Carl has indicated that he will help taking care of it. I'd rather make sure that we get this thing done right. The CCD ordinance that we passed, I'm hoping that Bob LeMay and Jim Wall are speaking to us from Long Beach. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, you need signatures, do you?
Yeah, I'd like to get it signed. Mary Lou had a family health situation she needed to do, but I think she's going to be available. And all we need are 3 signatures. And I think, if I remember, Coker comes back on Thursdays. So I'd like to get it into their hands because the paper came out yesterday with the notice that we passed the ordinance. We took a chance that we wouldn't flub, and so they passed a notice saying that the ordinance was passed the night before. So we have all the notices. The 2 previous notices, April 1 and April 8th, so we're ready to go. So that one has to go down by April 30th. So that one should reinstate our 5 cents. Everything else is looking fine. But we're, basically, if we take out the beach remediation, we're really closer to 2 million in terms of funds, which, this was before we're healthy, but I don't know what's going to happen with the CCD because we haven't heard anything about that. And as we know, we're not required to take all the money that they offer us, but that's something we're going to have to consider.
So, Bill, if I look at this 2.6 that you've got here on the sheet that I'm sharing right now, can you guys see that, the combined cash and the cash allocation?
Right.
Yep. So the 2.6 that we're looking at right here, are you saying that there's still some more money for making the CCMG 2020 payment that has not come out of here yet?
Yes, I think we talked about it, maybe another 100,000 that we're going to have to come out. It's going to have to come out of somewhere.
Okay, so we made the payment, but it's not the anything other than the CCMG account is not reflected on this 2.6.
Right.
And you think that's about another 100? Right.
So we have money in CCD. Pay that, and we've got paving. We've budgeted paving for that, but yes, so we're okay.
So we're at about 2.5 in cash right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, without any beach remediation expenses.
Bill, who do we owe the 100,000 to? The paving's all done, so how do we?
Yeah, but the paving's done, but the paying isn't done. We got 750,000 was payment 2, and there's still probably another 100,000. John Wall has talked about the fact that we're still negotiating on a couple of pieces that we did have some additional work that we asked for and got. We do have some material arguments that we've got, but in the main, I'd rather if we come up with only 80, that's good, but I think we should on 100.
Okay.
So I'm going to pop up the agenda real quick again so everybody can see it. Can you see the agenda now?
Yeah.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay. So budget projections by fund, I think unless somebody has anything else they want to ask about relative to cash position today, I thought we'd pop up Carl's sheets that he sent us and just discuss those briefly unless somebody else has a thought.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good idea.
Okay. So you'll have to let me know if these are visible now for you. Can everyone see that whole sheet?
Yep.
Okay. So essentially, Carl, do you want to just give us a general overview real quick?
Sure.
We have some novices in the meeting. I shouldn't say novices, but we have people who are a little bit new to the budget and finance group on the meeting today. I think I'm assuming that 531 is Mike Johnstone. Is that correct, Mike?
That's correct.
Okay.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. So what John and I think the committee has asked us to do is on a quarterly basis, try to show what the budget is for the year, what the year-to-date actual is, and then kind of look as we project into the next really 3 years, so it'll be 22, 23, 24, So to start with, on the far left-hand side, you would have 2018, 19, 20 actual. The top part of the spreadsheet is your receipts and revenues. And probably, I think the next page is going to be your disbursements. And then you would have the actual for the quarter ended March 31. And then we compare that then with your budget for the year. And then just kind of project out if everything goes according to plan. Here's kind of, you pretty much spend everything that you're anticipating and you receive everything that we've kind of budgeted. With some minor tweaks, this is kind of where we think we'll end the year for both revenues, disbursements, and your cash balances. So, and Bill provided us with the first quarter financials, so we just really kind of put it into this format that we thought would be helpful as you compare to prior years and then looking forward to kind of see where are we going. So if we look at actual through, for the general fund, you had a beginning cash balance at the bottom there of $384,000. Ending cash balance is $245,000. I think we're off just slightly to what Bill had, but we'll find that out here soon, figure that out. And just kind of, so just year to date, and you know, we don't collect our property taxes until June, so we are going to dip into the cash reserves a little bit. So I don't think it's anything to be alarmed about. One of the things we could try to look at, if you want to see, just compared budget versus year-to-date expenditure and put a difference column. If that would be helpful, we could add that as well. At some point, the spreadsheet gets a little bit too large, but we want to make it meaningful to all of you. And so if you have particular questions as to what something is calculating or what something means on here, please let me know, and we can kind of run through these. John, do you want to go fund by fund, or you want to just a high level for today?
Well, I think we can let the group steer that discussion, but in my mind, I think this is very helpful on some sort of periodic basis to see all of these columns. But I think as far as, in my mind anyway, for the quarter report, it might be best if we just had, you know, actual to budget with the difference column.
Sure.
You know, for the immediate, that quarter's analysis, so to speak. But I think this is very important as an overview.
Okay.
And as far as what we want to talk about today, as I say, Mike's relatively new to the council as well as to this process, and it might be beneficial. I mean, for instance, I took a look at all of your projected 2021 columns by account, and I think Mike's savvy enough to know, you know, that we've got these 8 or 10 accounts. And if you took at the negatives and the pluses for the balances on the beginning balance and ending balance, it looks like we're going to eat in about 150, 160 into reserves in total. Now, some of those funds are allocated specifically for certain activities, but 155 coming out of a $2 million cash position today isn't scary, I don't think. Maybe you could speak to that generally, and then we can go through the accounts.
Yeah, and you know, this is our first quarter. I think as we go through each quarter, we'll probably get a little bit better, and we'll maybe get a little more information from Bill. Kind of looking at just our trends in revenues coming in and expenses going out. Obviously, I think historically the town underspends most of its budget, especially like the general fund. I think you've been, well, there's probably been a few years where maybe you've overspent just a little bit, or it's, you know, the revenues are a little bit less than what the expenses are. But historically, you've built up a pretty nice nest egg in the general fund. So I would agree with you, John, that $155,000 or $150, whatever you had mentioned, that's probably nothing to get alarmed about right now, but if we see that trend getting worse, then we'll want to maybe look into, well, what's going on that's causing pressure on our either the revenue side or the expense side.
Yeah, I think those are great general comments. So if we want to buzz through these, I don't know what the pleasure of the group is, we can do that real quick. Essentially, the receipts are always over the top of the disbursement, so I've scrolled back up to the actual general fund receipts. And as you can see, the actual number. So when you say actuals, I think in terms of what we look at in the future, then actual would be collections budgeted, or are those actually in-house at the point where you call them?
Actually, so these would be what Bill's recording in his books and records, what he's actually received in revenues, and then disbursements be what he's actually dispersed out, so expenditures.
Yeah, looking at the top, it says actual, and then the budget is the rest of the year. So the other thing that's helpful is, I know it's a bunch of numbers that we get, but the software that we produce, that you get every month, does have year-to-date percentages on it that you can look at also. I mean, some of the things, I remember a former council member was disturbed because we were already at 80% of our budget for subscriptions and dues, but obviously those are ones that everybody wants their money at the beginning of the year. So some of those expenses get skewed to the first quarter and they're not spread. But things like salaries obviously are equal throughout the year.
But when I look at this particular sheet that's up now, Carl, when I look at the actual column, you've got that 654, 429 as your net property tax levy for this account. And then collections are at zero. That's because we haven't seen those yet.
That's correct. Yes. And we won't get those until June.
Okay. And then you're projecting out that that's not going to vary tremendously over the next 4 or 5 years, the way you see it.
No, and I think our footnote, we made the assumption that we get at least a 3% max levy increase over the previous year. So like for 21, it was like 4.3% increase. We don't know what it'll be yet for 22, but we like to kind of budget conservatively. So I don't like to get too far out on my skis, especially knowing that we just came out of a year of COVID. Probably some personal incomes are down right now, and the state does an average of the wage growth over the last 5 years.
So when you talk about, can you just address real quickly the gross and net on the property tax collections?
Sure. So our budget for the year, our approved budget order would be at $699,735. The circuit breaker amount is just our estimate of what the town will not collect because of the tax caps. The taxpayers are getting the benefit of the 1%, 2%, and 3% tax caps. And so the budget order comes out assuming there are no tax caps, and that's not realistic. So we subtract out the circuit breaker credits to get to a net property tax levy of the 654, 429. And then from there, we kind of looked maybe over the last 2 or 3 years at what the average collection rate is. And we've just kind of, again, estimated that you'll collect $581,000. So if you actually collect the full 654, that's even going to be greater, so much better. But again, for these projections, we're kind of trying to be conservative, kind of look at an average collection rate. I'll have to look to see how we did calculate the 88.78%, how that was exactly calculated. But that's how we're doing it. And then just each year, we're just adding 3% to the top number, well, for 21. And then 22, the 720 is just taking 699 times 1.03 to get to the 720, 727.
Great, yeah, that, just so everybody kind of understood that. So that's a projection then on the percent that we're going to collect, and we'll just have to see it. Bill was very concerned last year, then 2020, that we were not going to get much in the way, or, you know, that our collections might be impacted by COVID. But as anybody can see there in the actual 2020 column, we came in at 92.67, or roughly 93% on the collections, which I think is great.
Yep.
And Carl, there's nothing that, I mean, an individual municipality can do to help that collection percentage. That's somebody else's job to collect that money.
It's the the LaPorte County Treasurer is, they're the one that collects it. You can always encourage your neighbors to make sure they're paying their taxes on time, but
So unless somebody has any specific questions, I think I'll just scroll through this real quick if you see anything glaring or if you have any specific questions.
Could you go back up for one question I had to, you know, because I'm still, you know, wondering how we do that. When we look at Cadget, which is the first highlighted thing in the second grouping there, you know, we budgeted 150,000, but when you look at the 43,511, it looked we're clearly over $170,000. We're going to collect for the year. It's going to be, you know, but it does drop to 150,000, and that's just your projection. This is everything is lost a year as we were. That's why we're.
So that's what was used in when we put together the budget estimate for 21. It's typically a little bit conservative because we don't know exactly what the state's going to distribute. And so I'd rather be a little conservative and we come in a little bit better than too much the other way.
I see it. So I'm sorry. It's 155.22, and it's the same number we had for 2021. Okay, and
Yep.
I was pleased when I saw that we were getting more than we were getting last year, and that's okay. Thank you. I'm sorry.
No worries.
So unless anybody has any other specific questions, I'll just quickly scroll through here. If there's anything you want to make a comment on, Carl,
okay,
in terms of projections, here are our disbursements. And again, as you can see, if you look at the beginning and ending balances, and that's what we'll do with each account. Obviously, the general fund is the largest of the accounts. The projection is to be down about 84,000 on the general. So that would mean we'd be eating into reserves on the 21 projected. As we look at the next one, it'd be the MVH, and that one is also showing a negative when you look at the beginning and ending balance of about 90,000. And these projected revenues, then, I guess if there was an account that you felt less comfortable with what you projected, maybe you could tell us, Carl, that you're comfortable with.
Well, motor vehicle highway, we're probably going to see some declines over the next several years in the gas tax portion. Let me see, where is that? So yeah, the motor vehicle highway distribution amounts, although you're not collecting a lot of that revenue, it really affects more larger cities and towns because people did probably stay home more last year. And so the state did cut back some of their estimates of what they were going to distribute in 21 and 22. But since you're only collecting, 20 to 25,000, it's not a huge number.
Right, you've got that in it. You've actually dropped that in the budget, or we dropped that in the budget this year down to around 20. So, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then as we look at this fund is restricted, meaning it has to be spent in a specific way. Is that correct?
That's correct. So, yes, for paving. So half of the gas tax money has to go into a restricted account. This is thanks to our state legislators who thought that they were doing everyone a favor probably 4 or 5 years ago by increasing funding for streets and roads. And so they wanted to make sure that those monies are being spent for paving. The problem has been, and Bill can probably attest to you, over the last several years, those gas monies have been coming down. And so then when you restrict it only to paving, it really starts to put a crimp on some of your budget.
Could I please interrupt, Bob and John? Could you have the person, telephone 531, please mute their phone? They're sending a lot of information or feedback to everybody. Thank you.
My pleasure.
So this fund could potentially be used to help out with the CCMG payment. Is that correct, Bill?
That to me, that's usually where we're scrambling for money. So it's not much of a burden for the town of Long Beach because I typically, I'm going to have some of that MVH money will go into paying that extra $100,000. So it's not, it isn't a problem. It's that's always the part that's hardest. So we don't have a large staff to worry about. So that shouldn't be a problem.
Local roads and streets, that one has a little bit of a positive balance. That's not a huge account. I don't know, unless somebody has a comment they want to make on that one, we'll just move along on that one.
Yeah, it just comes in magically every couple of months.
CCD.
I believe we reset for the 5 cents here, the change, but that's not going to be once we get everything filed with the state and we get our approval, then the next quarter will, for the projected for 22, 23, 24, will show the increase.
Well, nobody's going to get out the calculator, Carl, so you can provide a guess. What do you think it dropped to, because of the way the state doesn't allow us to throw in our actuals for that? It was 4.7, 4.8.
It wasn't a lot of money. I was thinking it was like around $3,000. Does that sound about right?
Okay, it's fine. So it will give us a little bit more, but it's not
right.
It's not a godsend. Yeah.
It's not a windfall, right?
Yeah.
So the 212,000 in receipts does not reflect that little bit, or it does?
It does not. It reflects what we projected. So yeah.
Okay, so we'll help ourselves a little bit.
It may be it might be another $10,000 or $15,000 is what we would get. Yeah.
Okay. And then the Riverboat Fund, I know this one's been problematic in the prior year because of COVID. Their receipts were way down. So you've projected out a lower balance. We typically have gotten around 100. Is that right, Bill?
That is correct.
And you're projecting that it's going to stay down in this projection of revenues.
We did. Now as we go into second quarter here, let's see how the receipts are coming in, and if it's starting to come back up, we'll revise the projections accordingly.
Those receipts come in, what kind of periodicity do they come in under? Are those a monthly thing or a quarterly?
No, they come in twice a year. So it's June and December. So we won't know anything until June as to what numbers are. And okay. But typically the June payment is larger than when we were collecting 100,000 pretty regularly. It was usually 62 and 38. I'm not quite sure, how the gamblers work. And maybe when the weather's colder, they like to be inside more. So, but anyway, that's it. But we'll have a good figure.
And then seated is up a little bit. Anything that was down in, let's see, okay, no. So we're projecting that.
Projecting it will go down a little bit in 21, just due to some of the, again, state projections.
Okay. And then rainy day fund, we've got that.
That money that's in there because we needed that for the CCMG payment to Reeve Riley. That money that we got from coastal grants went into that fund because we'd already paid for, out of prior receipts, we'd already paid for the Stop 24 project.
Okay, so you've got an actual expenditure. You don't have an expenditure yet, though, but you're projecting.
Yeah, I mean, we actually wrote that check in April. The check, the $752,000 check to Reeve was in April.
So you pulled some out of here already.
Yeah, but I mean, that's why I wanted you to look at the April statement. I mean, obviously it says April 30th, and I printed it on April 9th or 10th. But, I wanted everybody to see that we'd shrunk a bit.
Okay. So, Carl, were there any other comments relative to what we just looked at, or does anybody else have any questions before I dump this one as far as the screen share?
Nope. I think that concludes my comments on this.
I don't know if Mike has anything he'd like to address on this one. Otherwise, I'll just close this out and we'll go back to the agenda.
I'm good, John. And by the way, I'm going to have to drop off at about 10 after
Okay.
my doctor's appointment.
Very good.
Hey, John Coker, are you in town? Is John Coker in town? I just was curious.
Was on the meeting.
Yeah, I know. Okay.
He is still on the meeting.
Okay.
I'm having a little screen share issue here. Give me 1 second. Excuse me. Here we go. So budget projections, unbudgeted items. I think we should spend a little bit of time on this. We visited this last budget and finance meeting. This is Pete's, I keep referring to it as Pete's spreadsheet. This is where we looked at cash position at the end of 2020 and then did our own internal rough estimate of cash balances for 2021. And that was without what I'm kind of centering up here, which is unbudgeted items that would affect those cash balances through the year. And these are, projections, and they're kind of critical for us. It's the ins and outs that aren't necessarily shown on what Carl shared with us a little while ago. Some of these things we can refine, and I think we should through the year. Carl, I don't know if would you be, or Bill, I don't know what the two of your thoughts are relative to you guys interjecting some of this into the budget on our quarterly reports. Or do we just reflect these as they actually happen during the year?
Certainly if we know things are coming up and again, it's been a while since I probably saw Pete's email of the items, but we could incorporate those items if we know that for certain that these are things that the town's going to plan to spend. We can incorporate those into the quarterly review.
Some of these have already occurred, Bill, I think. The salary survey, I think, we've already paid for. The Go Bond fee, I think, is already out, although I think he's showing the Go Bond.
Yeah. Yeah, it's in the bank and everything, and you've got that, yes. But,
and then,
you have regular payments for the police cars and regular payments for the roof and the community center and things like that are all part of the expenses that we've got.
So some of these are already in those budget numbers then?
Yeah.
But some are not?
Yeah.
Okay.
They should be.
At some point, for us to get a clearer picture on the quarterly, we probably should reflect the ones that are already, I think we should pull out of what we're looking at here, the ones that have actually occurred, and then we have a clear picture of what we need to anticipate through the rest of the year.
John, are you looking at the list of unbudgeted items now?
Yeah, can you see that?
No, we're still looking at the agenda, I think.
I'm sorry. Can you
There
see
we
it
go.
now?
Yep.
Okay, my apologies.
Nope.
Again, you heard the narrative on it, and I think it's important that we get the ones that are already completed out of this. But I think this is an important piece. And if, Carl, you think we can, make the adjustments to the ones that have already occurred, and then still, I don't know if this is something Bill handles or you handle or how we should do it, but I think it'd be important for us to know what's out ahead in addition to the historical information.
We'll work with Bill to make sure we try and incorporate as many of these in there as we can. But just like, for example, the GO bond payoff, that won't really occur until 2022. So that one, for example, we won't need to put in.
Do you have any more news? I know I asked you this once before, and you may not have had a chance, or maybe they haven't been able to answer the question, but the SRF escrow for sewers is kind of a significant number for our town. Right. And I'm not sure whether that's the minimum. It probably won't have to occur until the project is completed, I'm imagining.
Or we close on the loan. I'm still trying to coordinate a meeting with some representatives from Long Beach, Michigan City Sanitary, and SRF. And if we can then maybe get everyone on the same page with timing of the project, and then also explain how the billing's going to be working for those residents on Lakeshore Drive. I'm hopeful that maybe we won't need to do this additional escrow, or we can get some type of surety bond to cover it. But we still need to have that conversation yet with the SRF folks.
Okay. So again, if we can adjust what we report at the quarter, like the half year, I guess at this point, because we're already at the first quarter, maybe we can make these adjustments by that mid-year meeting that we report in on. That would be helpful. And maybe we'd even know something about that SRF account by then.
Right.
Do you see anything else on here significantly that we need to either change or? I mean, I don't. I think we can probably move on unless somebody else has any specific questions about this. Hearing none, I will attempt to get back to the agenda. Very good. We're in unfinished business now. The CCD fund, that's a done deal, I think, right? We don't have any issues.
Except for signatures that we need, and that's what we'll get later on this week, yeah.
Okay.
Bill, do you have that all ready now at the town center?
It is ready at the town center for a signature.
I'll see you right after this meeting.
We had one council member who kept signing, but is not present anymore, kept signing nay when it was intended to be aye. So I want to make sure everybody, it's the aye button. And then she was extremely embarrassed and we had to go back. So, and anyway, but yes, I just want to get everybody, I want to get at least 3 signatures on there plus mine, and then we'll get it off to Carl. And he has agreed to send it in to DLG, Department of Local Government Finance.
How often does this have to be reestablished?
Well, Carl and I would just not do it every year, but I know it bothered Pete. It's kind of it's because every year it goes down a little because they don't allow us the 20% increase or 18% or whatever our assessed values go up. So it shrinks to 4.75 or 4.82 or whatever it is. So every couple of years I think we need to look at it, but it doesn't bring in as much money as we would hope. But yeah, but it's worthy. It doesn't cost anything. Yeah.
hydrant fee and stormwater accounting, I guess the only thing there, the invoicing went out and we'll start accumulating the stormwater funds in that specific account. And I know you created a new account for that.
I have a little accounting problem with that one, but that's not something we can, the money, just because I set up a separate fund because we have to keep a separate fund for stormwater so we can account for it. But I'm going to have to do a journal entry to get it because we just didn't have enough lines to set this thing. We did it quickly. And so the money will be all going into 244 and I have to move it. 244 is garbage and leak. But I mean, instead of 2606 and 15, it's 4106 and I have to take 15 out for everybody. So,
as far as the hydrant fee, I know we rounded that up a little bit, so I don't think we're going to be. You may have a little bit of extraneous money.
That one's not going to cause any problem because it's just instead of me writing a check to the water department, all of our payments will go into that fund. So it will be one less step. So,
excuse me. I believe the actually hydrant fee will just stay in the water department because we have a separate line item. So the town doesn't have to worry about that.
Yeah. Yep.
So it'll continue to be that. I guess my question was, we rounded that up a little bit just to make it simpler. We'll see what we accumulate each month. So that, okay.
The set it fund will be richer by 30,000 annually.
Right. Okay. Cell tower, I left that on there at your instruction, Bill. I don't know if there's anything else.
Yeah, let's keep going. Yeah.
Okay. Financial procedures manual again.
Let's keep going.
Okay. Yeah. We've already spoken about the monthly and quarterly. So what were our thoughts? Are we doing this quarterly, Carl and Bill?
Yes.
I think that makes sense. Monthly might be a bit too much, but certainly it's whatever the committee would like us to do. I think quarterly makes a lot of sense. And then one of the things, John, we talked about is trying to put together more of a capital improvement plan that we kind of start really looking for the next 5 years of equipment needs as well as capital projects to kind of start laying that out. And I think you were going to start talking to department heads about start working on that. I think that's really going to be integral to, as we start to plan, how do we fund for various capital needs.
Right, and I think we have spoken to the street and the water department, and we already have information from the fire department. Mark's relatively new in his boots, so he has, I'm sure, is looking at that. We've already done some things with squad cars already, but they're, community center. You can, if you glance down to the new business column or paragraph, you'll see that we'll touch briefly on that in a couple of minutes. But yeah, I think that's a great thought. And then, but what you're talking about will also include some less definitive types of things like street inventory and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's kind of, what you want to start thinking about that you're going to need to either purchase or replace so that we can start thinking, how are we going to fund for these purchases? Because it seems like in the past, we kind of scramble a little bit and hope that we have money either in the seeded fund or in Riverboat to cover some of the things that come up. And this gives you a little bit of a timeline and kind of balance the needs. So we're not trying to fund everything in 1 year. But it's kind of like looking at, if you bought a snowplow and it has a life of 10 years, we need to start putting together a plan for when does that need to be replaced.
But do we have to reflect? I know you mentioned that there are decisions to be made about what we consider a capital item. Do we need to worry about things like street and the town hall value and the old school value, or is it more specific to rolling stock and
Yeah, I think for what I'm talking about on a kind of the capital improvement plan, it's more rolling stock the larger items that, you know, I suppose if you're good, the road paving, you've been doing a lot of it with the community crossings grant. But if that money starts to dry up, we'll have to look at other funding sources for that. Certainly, if there are going to be improvements to town hall or the community center, we probably should factor that, you know, in 3 years, we're going to need to replace a roof or something, you know, just so we have it out there so that the committee is aware that we have these large expenditures coming up.
Okay. Unless anybody has any questions, we'll move on to the next one. I threw this in here. I know, Bill, you mentioned in your opening comments at the town council meeting about the SBOA audits. I'm assuming, do you need some help on these?
Yes, I'm going to work with Carl and his Trista Hudson to help put together a concise plan for action. So we'll be working on that. Hopefully we can get some present for the May meeting that everybody can look at for the May council meeting. We have an objective to do this by June 30. So I'd like to do it before that, but that's the plan.
So do we need that as an agenda item for the town council meeting?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, you know, we've already agreed that we're going to do that. I mean, I think we'll put that on the agenda. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, great. If you need anything from us, obviously, let us know. In terms of the new business, we've kind of belabored this already. What I'd like to try to do today, maybe we need to do this at the town council level, but I'm working on the street department, and I talked to Tom about that, and he's very close to having his list put together. I talked to Greg about his, although he's only got a couple of pieces that we need to worry about in terms of capital equipment. I think it's a compressor and a mini excavator on his inventory. Fire department, we've already got that information. Police department, Mark, I know you're on. Maybe, I don't know if you need some help with it, but we can kind of project out and see what it looks like 5 years out for you as well. And I know you've been heavily involved in it. Sorry.
Yeah, good morning, John. I've already looked at our capital outlay for the next 5 years. The largest expenditures we'll have will be the replacement of probably at least 2 more vehicles, that being a 2013 and a 2014 that are in our inventory. And then our only other large expenditure on any given year is our body camera contract. That is about $17,000 a year. We're in a 5-year contract, year 2 of a 5-year contract now. Aside from that, we're in pretty good shape.
Okay. So what we're doing with the street department is Tom's putting VIN numbers and ages and rough values. So maybe we do the same with you. And then I know, Bill, we actually, believe it or not, Tom's telling me that he looked at that insurance list. He says there's a piece or 2 that are not on there. So we still have a couple of pieces, at least at the street department, that are not on the insurance list, and we don't want to get caught in that bag again. So when we get this information put together, we'll also get it to Jones and get those things added. I don't know who can handle the community center and the town hall complex, or if we need to do that as a group, or
John.
Joe's on there. Yep.
John, I've been, Doug and I just reviewed, we have a long list, but if you strictly capital, and the biggest item that we would have if we had a problem is the heating and cooling units. That would be the biggest thing, because we have that cooling tower in the back, and then each room has its own heat exchanger in it. So that would be the biggest expense. We've been working on that. When we first joined this group, that committee, which was about, I think, 4 or 5 years ago, we were overly concerned. We were concerned about this heating and cooling, but it seems like we got some procedures down where we do annually is we have to switch from the cooling tower. We turn it on and off because the cooling tower is necessary for the air conditioning and obviously not for the heat. And we've tried different chemicals. But anyway, that would be the biggest expense. The rest of the issues, we did the roof already. We have a new roof on the building, and I can't think, and I can go over it. We do have a long list. We haven't had meetings because of COVID, and we're hoping, and I think everybody now on the committee might have the 2 shots. So we're planning to have a meeting sometime mid-May. But like I say, the major issue would be we did some work in the basement to improve the water pipes. That would be maybe the second issue, if any. But we don't anticipate much there. But like I say, the biggest expense would be the heating and cooling units, and so. But we can go over that. I can present, or the committee or whatever. We can present anything that you want. How much you want?
Yeah, if you know of some things that you want to look at in the coming years, then if you could get something put together in your May meeting and have it for us for late May, early June, that'd be great.
Yeah, because we do have a wish list, which is quite lengthy because and again, it's not capital necessarily. It's painting, it's concrete. We still have the other wish we have yet, John, which was related to what you guys were doing, is we'd still like to improve that one parking space out in front of the building, which we never got a chance to really increase that.
Okay. Yeah, if you could get some information together, that'd be great.
Yeah.
As far as the town hall, Mark, I know you've been working pretty hot and heavy on that, and you and I have had some conversation relative to HVAC and some of the other issues in there. Maybe if you want, you and I can spend some time on that, unless you're already well down the road on that, and maybe by June we can have a little projection.
No, I agree. I think between yourself and I, and with input from Bill, I was just up in the crow's nest up top at the town hall here a week or 2 ago, checking on the heating, air conditioning units, looking at filters, stuff like that. So definitely, I've got a pretty good idea of what's going on, and we're in pretty good shape.
Great. I tried to list everything I could think of, unless somebody has another category that belongs in there. We'll keep these on there, and again, we'll try to have this thing wrapped up by mid-year. We already spoke about B, which is the escrow. Carl's working on some alternatives there. I just threw this revenue impacts in there for kicks. I know, Bill, we were expecting $250,000 or so in Biden money. That's not the right term, but I forget the.
It's ARP, but not AARP, but just ARP, American Rescue Plan.
There you go.
In Carl's defense, he scurried and got an ordinance together, which we could have presented at the April meeting, but if you recall, we got to 10 o'clock. Well, from the 7, we got a 3-hour meeting, and I decided that was unkind to everybody, so that it's all prepared and ready to go. So it's already on the agenda for the May meeting. That one will be one that I don't think there'll be any dispute from the audience, because what we're doing is justifying taking $240,000 from the feds and putting it in our bank account. Right now, Carl has indicated to me that the plan is that it's $120,000 probably later on in May, and then within the next year, the second $120,000 will accrue to the town. So right now, we've lost about. I've projected that we probably have lost, by the end of 2021, we have lost about $60,000 in rent revenue for the community center. I mean, we were just singing along beautifully. I think we put some money into that account back in 2013, if you can believe that. And the rents have nearly covered all of our expenses for our high utility costs that we have. I mean, we spend $3,000 to $4,000 sometimes in 1 month in the wintertime. And those of you who know more about this than I do, it always baffles me because I thought it would be gas expense for heating, but for a commercial building, most of our expense in January is electrical, which is not lights, but moving that heat around that big building and everything. And so we've got that done. But we're going to, the provisions of that is for lost revenue or water, sewer, and I can't remember what else is that. Is that right, Carl?
Yeah, and broadband or the broad provisions. They also allow you to pay COVID-related expenses as well. We're still waiting for further guidance from the U.S. Treasury Department on other eligible uses of this money. Yeah. But we can also allocate some where the revenues in 2020 were less than what they were in 19 pre-COVID.
Right.
And so you could move some expenditures into this new American Recovery Plan fund. But again, we're still waiting for further guidance as to how that's all going to work.
So with the riverboat being down significantly, conceivably, you could take some of the Biden money and throw it at whatever you were paying from the Riverboat Fund.
That is correct.
And Bill, we should be able to use some of those increased utility expenses also, because having the windows open and the fans blowing out can't help.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, in the end, it really doesn't matter, as we all know. I mean, we've got 2 bank accounts, one water and one, and one town, and all the funds, pick out of one bank account. So how we spend the money is not, is still critical, but, I just don't want to have to send any money back. So.
Does it sound, Carl, like potentially we might be able to shift, if they're talking about infrastructure, then we might be able to shift some of that money into, let's say, CCMG if we get an award this year, those sorts of things?
Well, it's not specifically mentioned for road paving. However, if we do some water main replacements like you're talking about, you certainly could use a portion of that money for replacing the water mains, as well as, if you're digging up the road, you got to put the road back. So, but for just general paving, it's not as a part of the bill, right? Or the legislation.
I don't think we, in a way, John, all we have to do, I think, is, if we have to take less money out of SEDIT and CCD and have more available for paving, because we're able to offset that, because I was going to approach the town, because we're not supposed to close the year with any negative balances, and we closed the year in the community center with $70.95 in that fund, and we're out. If you look at the latest funds, we're negative, because obviously we've got money to pay the bills, but that fund needs to be replenished. So I think the real issue is to be able to justify that. I don't think we have to stretch to pay them for CCMG. If we don't tax SEDIT, we've already got $30,000 more in SEDIT with this new hydrant fee and so those will all be monies that we could use for paying.
The other thing is, if I read it correctly, and again, I'm operating with just what I see in the paper, if we can reach for the Stop 17 drainage improvements, maybe that would be the infrastructure where we could use some of that money.
Yeah, that's true. That's part of it too.
So that was all. I just wanted to just briefly touch on some of the revenue tax.
It's good. So we that's on the agenda already for next, for next month, the ARP, American Rescue Plan.
Good. I really don't have anything else on the agenda. I'm going to stop sharing that now. I don't know if anybody else has any other issues they'd like to discuss.
This was
Hearing
good.
none. I know John, for some reason, John Coker's not able to actually speak. So he texted me, and I'm going to see if he's got anything that he will text me with to let me know that he has something to speak about. So John, if you have something you want to text me that I can ask for you, otherwise I think, does anybody else have anything?
I think we're good. I think that quarterly review was great. Thank you, Carl. That was helpful.
Go ahead. You're welcome.
Thank you, Carl. Yeah, the one thing that I will just add, that I've only gotten one email regarding our letter asking why we're charging $15. That seems like a lot of money. So, I'm sure there are others. I don't want to encourage more, but I was surprised at the limited number of, I had a few phone calls, but no threats or anything else. I think basically that thing went fairly seamless, and I think that's always good.
Yeah.
At the last council meeting, the Stormwater Utility Board was anointed or appointed or whatever the correct term is, consisting of myself and Mike Johnstone and John Coker. So we will, sometime in the near future, hopefully at least before the June meeting, and come up with whatever we need to come up with in terms. And I don't know if that enabling an ordinance has some specific duties, but we'll have to take a look at that as well.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that we've got that Carl has reminded us is that we probably, right now we've said we've got plenty of money that we need to spend in terms of vacuums and trailers and and things like that. But we probably should be more formal and have some kind of a printed budget that we have. And but that's something we can get to.
And maybe what we'll do is approach Carl once we get the group together. We'll get the band together and come up with a list of questions for Carl and review the ordinance ourselves and get better equipped to make those kinds of informational exchanges. Believe it or not, John Coker tells me in his text that he is speechless for once, so you don't have to worry about any questions from John. I think that's about it. The only thing I might want to mention, Carl, for the benefit of all of us, what would be a typical reserve fund if we really were tight and we're trying to spend everything we had? What should we have in the bank looking forward?
Well, it may vary from fund to fund a little bit, but I would say the general fund, you would want to have at least 2 months of your annual expenditures in as a kind of a cash reserve. That's just kind of a quick rule of thumb. You could do more or less. Or if you want to set a target for like at 20%, of your expenditures. I think the town has been keeping up with that for the most part. Maybe not quite totally, but it's pretty close. 20% of $1 million, it's 200,000, and you started the year at 384,000. So I think you're funding at a pretty good level there. But you could set goals for each of the funds, motor vehicle, highway, local road and streets, CCD, you could do the same, but again, that's mostly for capital expenditures. But it's always good to have some money on hand at the end of the year so that Bill's not having to figure out how to pay for bills until property tax monies come in.
Just Carl and Bill are the only two people on this meeting who were around in terms of positions of authority in 2012. And I remember the first budget that we submitted, or annual report that we made, we were minus $850,000 in the general fund. And I said, how do we report that? And we just had to do it. So but we were probably the only community around that did not have to go to the bank to make payroll and things like that. So so credit to a lot of the other village fathers that were around, that we had enough reserves that we were able to squeak through. But it did get a little testy, a little close in 2013. And then when the tax got resolved, we got caught up again. But yeah. So
Bill, that had to do with that property tax assessment problem we had in LaPorte County?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Oh yeah, that was the whole thing, Bob, but it was a little touchy. So and Pete did a lot of good work in that regard. So I congratulate him. I hope he's doing better.
He's on vacation now, so he's good.
What's that? Okay.
He's on vacation now. He's good.
Oh, is that right? Oh, cool. Well, that's good.
So as far as action items moving forward, then we'll make some progress on the capital improvement program. If Bill, or rather Carl, can spend a little time trying to incorporate that projected out of budget Pete's spreadsheet, so to speak. If you don't have that revised one, in fact, I'll send you what I've got, what we just looked at. You may not have been on that email thread where we sent the revised one out. We made a few changes to it, but it's actually historical at this point too, because there's quite a few changes. But maybe we could have a little powwow before the next budget session so we know what we're doing. I'm sorry, before the next mid-year meeting with you. Prior to that, maybe we can sit down and kind of hammer those things into where they belong and make some adjustments. Does anybody else have anything else?
No.
Well, thank you all. I guess, do we need a motion to adjourn, or do we just hang up?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
All right. Have a good day.
Thanks, Carl.
See you guys.